A couple of years ago, I tried for the first time the dissociative psychedelic called ketamine, and it was a profound, eye opening experience. And it was within the comfort of my home under the supervision of a telehealth professional. And I'll just say this right now, we're absolutely living in the future. The Jetsons couldn't have even conceived of shipping a brown cardboard box with schedule whatever narcotics to my home address legally, safely, and in my bedroom, experiencing these wild ego death, dissociative type of states, and no paranoia, no running around the law, totally legitimate, 100% above board, and for medical, psychiatric, therapeutic purposes.
Feel the fire, see the dream, code of stars in my bloodstream. This is power, not just invention. This is life in the destiny engine.
Wow. Now, I am not recommending that anyone do this. I'm gonna just say definitively once and for all, I don't think that you should open this doorway. And if you do decide that you want to do this, then I'll give some pointers like what I figured out and what happened to me, and I'm going to talk about my experience. Of course, listen to your doctor. This is between you and your medical professional. So, whatever I say here, this is not medical advice. But I wouldn't have gone into this experience had it not been for this scam of a healthcare concept called an FSA. It's a flexible spending account that I got through my employer. I thought it was a savings account, but the thing is, if you don't use all the money in your FSA, by the end of the tax year, it just vanishes into thin air. Whether you went to the doctor, whether you used it or not, uh, it just disappears. And I'm not somebody who makes a habit out of going to the doctor. I'm relatively healthy, and when I do have an issue, I try to work it out in a natural way with qigong, with meditation, with adjusting my diet, drinking more water, getting sunshine, stuff like that. So when I realized towards the end of the year that I was just going to lose this money, I had to figure out how to spend a couple $1,000s real quick. And so I thought back to the ad I saw on Facebook for ketamine, and I'd seen some for Mind Bloom and a few others. So I did some research into that, and I wasn't seeking out ketamine, but I definitely had my share of, I guess, psychiatric issues. I have some PTSD trauma from some strange and prolonged and chronic situations in my home. So when I got the telehealth appointment, it wasn't a stretch at all that, yeah, I was having nightmares and had anxiety, and it wasn't really sure about my outlook on life, which sort of checks all the boxes that the medical professionals say, yeah, maybe you could benefit from ketamine. So like I said, I did some research, and I wanted to have an experience. There are levels of ketamine that are considered therapeutic, but that you won't necessarily have a full blown KO type of disappearance into the non reality upside down world. But that those weren't the type of things I was after. I wanted to have a big experience legally because, you know, it's the future. But it seemed at the time, this might have changed, this was 2023, that Mind Bloom was giving those threshold type of doses, and that people on the interwebs were reporting that they got bigger dosages from other places. Another name bandied about was Joyous. I don't recall all the different options at the time. Well, the one that I settled on was called New Life, and they seemed willing to dispense multiple hundreds of milligram dosages, which were sufficient in an oral quantity to induce the dissociative psychedelic experience. But yeah, like if you wanted to have the same type of experience in a clinical setting with a IV, you might not need that same quantity, but because they give you it's either a lozenge or they give you a spray for your nose. So they shipped me the lozenges, and I was supposed to have a sitter, and I needed to communicate with them when I was gonna do the trip and send them a picture of me with my sitter with the dose that I was gonna take. And that's how they sort of kept tabs on my safety, because it's got a great safety profile, but there are contraindications. So, you know, I take a picture with my sitter. Here's the number of tabs I'm gonna take, and I'd fill out a little questionnaire before and after, like, what do you plan to work on and how did it go after. Now, ketamine can help with some pretty crazy types of conditions. Like I said, it'll help people with PTSD and depression. And I wasn't suicidal. But here's the crazy thing, is that they realized that ketamine had therapeutic potential in this way after a series of incidents in which they would rescue somebody from a suicide attempt, as somebody jumping off a bridge or something. And in the ambulance ride back to the hospital, they would just put them in the K-hole. They would dose them with ketamine just to take them down a few notches and make them manageable. But they give them like these mega doses of ketamine to just turn them into a blob, which basically you're not going to have control over your limbs, and you know you can't really walk quite right, and your coordination is it's like you're very, very drunk and then some. But they followed these people in the months after receiving the, not treatment, but just the sedation, and realized that something in them had flipped, that they no longer had suicidal ideation, and that they had a renewed outlook on life. And so they concluded that there was something about ketamine that reset your nervous system just by almost powering down the system all the way and then turning it back on. Like a computer, you just get totally flushed and have an opportunity to rewire your synapses. And so there's metabolites of ketamine that are supposed to stay in between your neurons for quite some time. I can't quite explain all the science of how it works, and I'm not sure that the researchers 100% understand the mechanism, but it is therefore approved for treating those types of conditions. And so I enjoyed freaking my father out telling him that I was doing prescription ketamine, and telling my my cop stepbrother, hey, like I'm doing illegal drugs and you can't arrest me. My father worried about me though. He's like, why are you doing ketamine? That's a hard drug. Well, it's interesting, and I'm gonna get into why, uh, you know, it's better to proceed with caution on this. So I really wanted to make some contact with the spirit world, and that was sort of my intention going into the experience. And I had a series of these experiences because and I wound up paying for more experiences than I actually needed just to so I could use my entire FSA. But I decided I can't do this anymore. It's pretty intense, let me tell you. Um, and so as I was coming up, there were distinctly two phases of the ketamine trip. So as you're coming up, the lozenge is dissolving in your mouth, and the longer you hold it in your mouth, especially if you brushed your teeth and created little micro abrasions in your gum line to help it absorb, the longer you hold it in your mouth, the higher up you go on on the same dosage level. And so I went maxed out. I think I must have been given 150 or 200 milligrams for the first go around. And they increased it from there, but it delivered, and I was trying to connect with the goddess Lakshmi, the Hindu goddess of wealth and money, because at the time uh, I was looking to make a career pivot to becoming a full time YouTuber and hadn't quite cracked the code yet. And so I went to connect with Lakshmi, and in fact, they tell you to listen to some kind of music, something calming, or some kind of meditative soundtrack. And so I was listening to a mantra for the goddess Lakshmi. It was very, very beautiful. If I remember, I'll link it in the description. But I did I did start seeing these closed eye visions of gods and goddesses, like the Hindu pantheon basically started to show up in my closed eye vision. Now this is very dark side compared to other psychedelics, as in when I had done other types of fungal medicine or other synthetic type of psychedelics, there were colors, and it was vibrant, or the tryptamine experiences are distinctly different in that, yeah, there's colors, and your mental faculties are brightened and elevated to the point where you're seeing things from an elevated perspective. Maybe from a higher chakra, let's put it that way. This is the third eye experience must have proceeded from the third eye up through the crown and just remained in the higher chakras of perception. So my other psychedelic experiences were of that nature, but this seemed to originate in a more dismal, lower astral type of realm. That is, everything had a distinctly darker hue to it. And I had been warned about the lower astral in various literatures that I've perused. But this was the first time I came really face to face with it where I could see it. Although, so the come up was extremely positive, and I made, like I made contact with these spirits. And I started to realize somewhere between the peak, the plateau, and the come down that there were layers and levels to the universe, that beings are able to ascend or descend based on their vibration. And yeah, like everyone watching knows that. I knew that. But this was the first time that I really felt that. I felt that my karma was 100% my responsibility, that the universe is Darwinistic. The universe rewards quote unquote good behavior, that its nature is love, its nature is infinite abundance, but you really have to like dig in, shoot down some roots, and bear fruit from out of that abundance for the edification of the universe, Godhead, whatever you want to call it. That those that bear enough fruit are permitted to proceed to the next generation. And the extent to which you bear fruit sort of correlates with how much you help other people and give to other people or to other beings. And you can sort of do this from your own labor, through your own cultivation. If you study Taoist cultivation or yoga, they have different methods and paradigms of ascending through the chakras in the Hindu system, vertically stacked from Muladhara on up to the crown, or in the Taoist literature, sort of like centripetal from the lower Dantian, like through all the internal organs and building this immortal fetus that you eventually give birth, and then you can like shoot off into the cosmos as a immortal yang spirit. But this kind of cultivation takes time, and people that do it are obviously energy vortices in the space of their lives and have more to give to other people and other beings, and are therefore allowed to continue to exist by the universe. They've borne fruit, so to speak. And then those beings that don't bear fruit, they are eliminated. They're very callously and without apology recycled, and another being is given a chance to exist in your place. So this is the nature of things that I saw, and I saw how very close to the bottom of the food chain that I really am. In fact, I don't know that I could be any lower than I am, or that I was. That it was communicated to me that I'm level 0. And interestingly, the plateau turned dramatically into the come down as soon as I swallowed the lozenge. So I was literally holding this ketamine lozenge in my mouth for like a half hour, 40 minutes. And this wasn't just one trip either. It wasn't coincidence or anything. It was literally every single one of the trips. I must have done like 7 or 8 experiences where when I finally swallowed the lozenge, like it got to be like too much saliva in my mouth. Um, that's like it was a sharp come down after that from the happy, bright, sort of mid astral plane. Then it started to show me, that stuff. Like, this is where you're at, dude. You're level 0, and you got a lot of work to do if you don't want to just turn to dust when you die. And the first couple experiences, it was a rather low dosage, and so I like the come down wasn't particularly harsh. It was very interesting, and I had my partner take notes on what went down. Like, she had a notebook and just wrote down everything I said. I gotta find that. I gotta dig that out. But each one of those experiences, as the dosage increased, like the visions also increased, and the come down was a lot harsher. And I'll talk about how ridiculous the come down was in a minute. But at the time of the first couple dosages, I was working on an AI program. I'm an engineer. I was working on a piece of software that would generate videos for YouTube that you could feed in a script, and it would produce beautiful AI imagery. We were using Midjourney and ChatGPT at the time. And I conceived of this idea, and I don't think anybody else was producing this kind of AI slideshow video on YouTube at the time. And I think I got the timestamps to prove it. It's over on Sundusk Sagas. But each one of those videos had a piece of my soul in it. I was trying to produce some serious spiritual content based on what I have gathered over the years and tell really awesome stories and get people to think and go deep within themselves. And so I succeeded in building this software, and I was having doubts producing these videos. I was also enrolled in a coaching program to help faceless content creators to actually make money doing this, get their channel to take off. And it's called the Faceless Channel Academy, run by Devin Knupp. It's still operating. It's a really great program if you want to learn faceless YouTubing and escape the grind. But I'm in this program, and I'm just sitting there wondering whether the course that my life has taken was actually a worthwhile one. And this was like the second or third trip. The ketamine told me that I had been helping other people since the prior trip, that I started to help people make their own faceless channel. I was helping people with my content. I was helping people make money. I was creating jobs for people. And because of that, it said, congratulations, you've reached level 1. And when I asked, well, how many levels are there? Uncountably many. So it was a pretty small feat to have reached level 1, and it showed me that I would last a little longer before being eliminated, but I wouldn't entirely be eliminated. But it was showing me, like, this is the path. Yeah, you're absolutely doing the right thing, helping people with this technology and the direction that your life is going. So stuff started to take a more biblical turn. That, if you recall the story of Adam and Eve in Genesis, that they ate of the tree of knowledge of good and evil because the serpent tempted them to do it. And that if you ate of this tree, you were supposed to be like God because only God knows good and evil. And if you know good and evil, then you can create as God creates. And this was so tempting for Eve. She couldn't resist. And then Adam followed the woman because man can't be without woman. And then, they were like God. They were cast out of the garden. But whether you read it through the idea that they were punished for their actions or their actions actually were the consequence, that being like God and destroying your innocence in exchange for power, just gives you this sense of isolation, just being cut off from the source, being cast out of the garden. And by virtue of being cast out of the garden, their lifespan was cut short. That God was, depending on how you read it, either lying or telling the truth when he said, when you eat of the tree, you will surely die. Well, they didn't die immediately, but either they were always going to die and just wouldn't have known because their eyes were glued shut. That's option one. Option two is they weren't going to die until they ate of the tree. They ate of the tree, and now their lifespan has an expiration date, and they're aware of it. Or option three, their lifespan is now in entropy. That is, eating of the tree of knowledge of good and evil started a clock on their entire downline, their entire ancestry, because like Adam and Eve lived for like 1,000 years or something, and by the time you got to Noah and the ark, he was living for 500, and all down through the Abrahamic line, the lifespans were decreasing until now. Most people don't even live 100 years in modern times. Life expectancy in the Western world is something like 70 or 80. Maybe 90 is considered a good life. But that entropy, what the ketamine showed me is that by eating of the tree of knowledge, we made a big decision, like a big fucking forever now type of consequence. And this wasn't something that our ancestors did. This was something that we all did, like our souls did, that my soul did, or it wouldn't have incarnated in the 3D forever now. And that's how the K-hole presented itself to me, is this is the forever now, that for better, for worse, like it or not, I am now a mortal being in the forever now, because I was cocky, I was prideful, and I chose to take my spirit and deconvert it to a lesser frequency into a mortal body. And once you have a mortal body, you are on fire. This is literally my trip. It was like an Edenic trip, okay? I am seeing that my body is on fire, my life force is on fire. And when I was born, I have like this much life force. And it's like, by incarnating, it's like I ate the fruit, the tree of knowledge of good and evil, struck a match and lit my spirit on fire, and now its life force it decreased in frequency, so now I can exist in physical matter. And this fire can never be extinguished. We can never go back. We're stuck in the physical forever now, when before we were spirit, and now we're going to die. And so that's where the by your own efforts thing came into play for me, is that there is a long ass climb back to Eden. And yes, it is possible to make the long fucking climb back to Eden, but it's the journey of a lifetime. And this is one that I've been wrestling with making for a few years now, since I began to study the Taoist yoga and Qigong, was whether I want to make that climb back to immortality. Now, this is why the Abrahamic men of Genesis, these great men that were, a better man than me or probably anybody living today, like more of a masculine man, were just obsessed with the preservation of their seed and praying to God that their seed would give birth to generations. That if their wives were infertile, this was sort of a existential disaster for them and their bloodline. Because once you've incarnated here and you've chosen that you want to use your spirit creative force to create physically like God creates in the sexual act, the only way that your existence continues after you die is your offspring, as your descendants, in a third dimensional sense. So the come down for me this wasn't just even one trip. This was like every trip. The come down was an intense, visceral experience. The painful separation experience, the trauma being relived of the descent like lightning, is the sound of this realm is lightning, that when the second you eat of the tree of knowledge, it's you come down in a flash of lightning and you're on fire, and you made a forever now big boy decision, and here you are. So the come down was a near death experience, and not even as many people describe the near death with the white light and the tunnel vision. The come down was dark. It was extremely low astral. It was circling the drain. In the Tibetan Book of the Dead, it said that when you die and you're not prepared for it, there's going to be a lot of confusion. That you're going to long for a body. You're going to leave your body and you're going to go, what the shit? I need my body. And you're going to crave for it. You're going to regret leaving. And it says that the best thing you can do basically is nothing at all, to stay absolutely quiescent and to await the transition. Hopefully you had exited through a higher chakra instead of a lower one, so that you'll be in the upper astral when you die. So you really have to die consciously. But for me in this particular experience, I felt what it meant to not have a body, having eaten of the tree of knowledge. And to not have a body didn't just mean I'm floating around like Casper. That's kind of what I had envisioned. But no, like, not having a body means having zero footing in any reality. That is, there's no ground. There's nothing solid. There is nothing anchoring you to anything. Nothing anchoring you to anything physically, emotionally, spiritually. And so there's nothing left to do but cycle through everything. To cycle through every type of karma that I had accumulated. And to just loop through every situation in my life for brief seconds, clinging to it and then being like sucked on to the next thing without any resolution and without any ability to influence those realities. That is, as a yin spirit, you can't actually make any change to your reality. And so you just swirl. And you can't even choose to stay in one reality and watch it like a movie, because you're just getting lambasted by astral currents and the momentum of your own karma. And it was absolutely miserable. It was dark. I was seeing the worst side of everything. And I was seeing, like, yeah, I'd made it to level 1, but here I am just getting recycled. And luckily, I knew this was just a trip, but I understood that if this wasn't a trip, if I had actually died, then I really would be circling the drain until God knows what would happen next. And I felt what it was like for my body to just turn to dust. Like, I actually felt my living tissue start to dry out from the inside out. I felt it turn like dusty and like crack, and I felt as though my house had sort of become a haunted house and old and just like filled with dusty old antiques, and that I was to become a dusty old part of history that no one cared about. Okay, so it was in those moments that I did the one thing that I could think to do that didn't really make any sense, but it's sort of the only option. Was I called out to Jesus. And that's when I felt Jesus' presence. And it didn't stop the swirl, but he was a solace. He was there. And I realized that that's the role of a being like Jesus. Is they're the one force in the universe. The one, chief of reality, whatever rank they hold in the cosmos. They're up there, and they don't necessarily give a shit if you bear fruit. They're willing to intercede on your behalf, and they're willing to carry you up even if your own karma doesn't tip the scale in your favor. That is, somehow they are in touch with a source of forgiveness and are able to dispense that like water if we connect with them. And I realize there's kind of two paths to immortality, and the that latter one is a path of devotion and alignment with one of these forces that doesn't require you to achieve perfection. And that's a hard pill for the ego to swallow. A lot of Christians will say that you can't actually be perfect, that you can't actually earn your way to heaven, so to speak. And I kind of think that's bullshit. It's just really hard. It's just really freaking hard. And there are beings that came before us that have become giants. And they said, stand on my shoulders. It's okay. I got you. And we're able to make faster progress in our own spiritual development by calling upon the master's energy. And when we can actually connect with them, when we can connect with our masters and connect with our ancestors, the unbroken chain of men and women that preceded us, and we use their energy, we use their expertise, and then we add our own, we can get farther than anyone ever has in history. So that was the main experience that I had on ketamine. It showed me things that I didn't really want to see. That is, I was sort of repressing this, and I think we all are, because in polite circles I sound sort of crazy talking about this. And I kind of knew the metaphysical side of the Adam and Eve thing, but when I viscerally experienced Genesis and understood that I took a part in that, and that there really is no time to procrastinate in this felt existential reality. It's not a fucking video game. This is real. And the stakes couldn't be higher. Well, I can see how that type of energy could shake someone out of a depression. I could see how that would wake a guy up from thinking that none of it means anything. When you really get your place in the cosmos, this opens doors, and I didn't bring any demons back with me, so to speak, and I see a lot of stuff in my feed about people did psychedelics and then they got attached to a demon, and there were things that they struggled for years to exorcise out of their lives. That wasn't me, luckily, but I can see how that could happen. You are 100% opening a door to the spirit world. What I will say that if you want to try this and actually have a really great experience, make sure you got your story straight on what your condition is. When you talk to your telehealth person, you only have about 15 minutes to describe what's happening to you. Um, you know, write down your symptoms. If you have PTSD, what that means for you. Do you wake up with night sweats? Do you have social anxiety? Do you have trouble sleeping? Do you have thoughts that maybe you shouldn't have? And then find a provider that you feel can be really good to you. The one I went with, New Life, unfortunately, they don't exist anymore. I don't know if they got sold or just went belly up, but they're very competent professionals, and they had support groups, and they had counselors on call that, I talked to a couple of them that were very supportive of my experience and confirmed everything I said. It actually seemed to be a very common trip, what I went through. And, just see, when you shop around, there are a lot of options for ketamine therapy. You can research what the stipulations are for how they want you to take it. If you have to be on some kind of video call the whole time, or if you have to have a sitter, and what kind of training they've got to go through, how much they'll prescribe to you, and see if that kind of dosing measures up to the type of experience that you feel would be beneficial to your growth. And I was the kind of go big or go home type. I definitely wanted to have a big experience. So there's a lot of people that talk about it on Reddit. So if you have done ketamine therapy, let me know in the comments how it was for you. What did you experience? What was your trip? What did you like about it? Which provider did you go with? And yeah, I hear a lot of people talking about wanting to do ketamine in our private community, the Obsidian Inner Order. And so I wanted to make this video to help people understand kind of what it is and what are the benefits and what you go through. And just to give a kind of warning that it's a big thing. You may not come out the same person that you went into it. And it's very consciousness altering. So what I think would be really cool is to try ketamine with a Destiny Engine meditation. And if you don't know what Destiny Engine is, this is my personal program that I built for exploring the rewriting of my own subconscious beliefs using binaurals, affirmations, and subliminal messages. And I combined it all with AI to create fully custom meditations to rewrite your core beliefs in just minutes. And this uses the most powerful, pure gamma, theta, alpha sine waves generated straight on your device. And you can start the trial for just $1. So steal that from me. The link is in the description. But, if I ever go back to ketamine, I'll probably try Destiny Engine on ketamine. And, what's funny about listening to music on ketamine or any kind of audio experience is that it can be tough to remember exactly what happened to you on ketamine. It's very dreamlike and the memories fade pretty quickly. So if you have that auditory anchor and you hear the same song again that you only listen to on ketamine, then it will take you back to that experience. And so some of those mantras that I listen to are very, very beautiful for contacting Lakshmi. Those help to take me back to the experience. And it was very, very beautiful. It was a very beautiful trip, and I'll always treasure that as one of the highlights of my human experience, even though some of it was scary. So that's what I got for you today. Thanks a ton. Like this video if it helped you out, and subscribe to the Destiny Hackers Collective. And we will see you in the next one.